In Bridget Jones' Mad About the Boy, Renée Zellweger returns as Bridget Jones for a fourth and possibly final time as she re-enters the world of dating after years of being a widow. The movie is based on the 2013 novel of the same name and has Hugh Grant and Emma Thompson and many others come back to reprise their roles and are joined by Woodall and Chiwetel Ejiofor. So Reuben, what did you think?
Yes, so I mean, I'm a big Bridget Jones fan. I really, really love the first one. I think it's one of the great romantic comedies when we look at, the canon. But I was really worried going into this because honestly, I don't really want a sort of sad sequel to a film that I loved in which one of the main characters has died. Let's start off with that because it's no spoiler, it's in the trailer. Darcy is dead. They've killed off Colin Firth. And I love him. I love Colin Firth. I love Mark Darcy. I love the pairing of Darcy and Jones. They just go together perfectly, and I've bought over the 25 years I think it's been since the first film came out, I've really bought into their romance. So for him to be dead is honestly quite devastating, but it is, as you say, following the story as it is in the books. I think this is the third book but the fourth film due to rights. Anyway, basically we now arrive at a situation in which from the outside you have sort of carved out one of the crucial ingredients of your rom-com. You've taken something perfect and you've ripped a hole in it by removing Mark Darcy. Who wants to watch a film where Bridget Jones is just sad, husbandless, being a single parent and struggling? I mean, that doesn't sound like a very fun time, does it? Which is why the film doesn't do that, and it's actually one of the best films of the year. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's so lovely. It's so heartwarming. It does an amazing job of talking about grief and about love and about the passage of time in a way that I just thought was amazing. It reminded me, and I hate to bring it up on this show again, it reminded me of We Live in Time because it's engaging with this incredibly complex kind of network of feelings where you can simultaneously be completely in love with somebody who's not here anymore, but also trying to live your own life, trying to return to the workplace, trying to be able to move on to new relationships without feeling like you're betraying your former partner. And it navigates all of that so brilliantly. The film is incredibly sad, I have to say. You'll be crying long before the opening titles start, and you'll be crying for the rest of the film because it's monumentally emotional. But it is superbly done. I can't believe how good it is. I can't believe that we have got a sequel to Bridget Jones 25 years later, which is, I think, as good as the first one. This really matches up to the characters and the overall sense of this is what life is that we get from the kind of, the frazzled 30-year-old Bridget in the OG. So honestly, this was such a lovely surprise. I was so skeptical. I was such a cynic. I thought, why do we need this? They're ruining Bridget Jones. But it's actually amazing. I watched it with my brother and my mum and my girlfriend. It was a completely packed screen. There were no free seats. Everyone laughed. Everyone cried. There was a little round of applause at the end. It is absolutely terrific, and I think, everyone and their dog is going to see it, so it's going to be a huge smash hit, and it really deserves it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I loved the film so much, and I'm also a massive Bridget Jones fan. I agree with almost everything you said. I will say about Colin Firth, first of all, about his death, again, not a spoiler, it happens kind of before the film starts, and I think to begin with, what I appreciated about the film is they didn't go about it in kind of a generic way of writing a character off. They actually used previous storylines and stuff that we know about the character in order to do that, which I think was great. And it kind of felt more like, okay, I can see that happening within the world and it doesn't feel like just a writing device. I will say I love Colin Firth, but I never actually felt in the previous films like they're the perfect couple.
Whoa! Whoa!
Right?
Shots fired.
I always rooted for them because, both actors are so charming, the characters are fun, and, the films are so great. So I root for them. But there are, especially if you look at like the second film, just something about their dynamic was always like ever so slightly toxic for me. So although I rooted for them and I was happy when, you know, it was his baby and they got married, I kind of almost was happy, not that he died, but like that she has kind of another chapter in her love life. And I know that's a very unpopular opinion, but I stand by it. And I do think this was the perfect way to end kind of that saga. And I think it will be the last one. It's the last book. And I think the film does kind of close the ending she kind of needed and deserves. And kind of all the characters as well. Renée Zellweger just has this charm that she can make every mundane action just make you laugh and kind of warm your heart. And I think that's why they could afford to have the film be a comedy again, because of Renée Zellweger, and obviously it's also well written, but there is stuff about it that are so almost mundane, and they're kind of portraying how to be a single mom who's a widow and kind of navigating life. And I actually read, after watching the film, an article written by a single mom widow, and she said that she kind of saw herself in the film. So kind of when I read that, I was like, right, so it didn't just feel like an accurate portrayal. People are saying it is actually an accurate portrayal, which I think it was really well done for this kind of film and was really unexpected. And I think because Renée Zellweger is who she is, it worked. And also Hugh Grant, such a scene stealer. Every time it was on screen, and he had his own arc to go through as well, which was also quite profound and heartbreaking at times, but he managed to just kind of just bring a smile to your face every time he was on screen. And I think some of the best jokes and like my biggest laughs were from him. The supporting cast generally, like Emma Thompson was in it for like 3-4 scenes, and she added so much to it. I thought that the love story aspect of it surprisingly was the weakest part.
Really?
Now again, this is in comparison to every like other amazing aspect in it. I don't actually think it's not good. I think it's just a weaker aspect just because the love story felt a bit episodic, and then kind of when one storyline ended, you kind of saw where the next storyline is going to go. It was still well done, but I think kind of going into the film, I kind of already knew how it was going to end, but then they still managed to kind of keep me on my toes to a certain extent, and obviously it was such a great fun, and I think it's definitely on par with the third one that I loved. I loved the third one. I don't think anything will match the first one, but it's definitely getting there.
That's so interesting. I mean, I actually haven't seen the third one. That's the one that I haven't watched because I sort of thought, oh, why are we getting another Bridget Jones film? Why do we want that? But I'm definitely going to check it out after your glowing review. I mean, just to come back to the performances of the supporting cast, because I can't get over how great everybody in this film is. I was knocked out by the children. Because Bridget has a son and a daughter, and they're fairly young. I think he's 11 and she's sort of 4 or something. I have no idea. I don't know about children. Anyway, but I just thought they were amazing child performances. Honestly, so often we have child performers who come in and are really, really clunky. And they were amazing. I completely believed that they were the children of Renée Zellweger and Colin Firth because they look a bit like them. And they just had the family dynamic down so perfectly. I loved the bit at the end where the little girl crawls under a table and starts eating crisps. I felt very seen. I honestly was so blown away by what an ensemble it is. And, you know, I have to mention as well the love interests. I know you felt that was maybe the weaker part of the story, and I kind of do see where you're coming from. At times it feels a little bit like, you know, plot machinery saying, okay, this is a rom-com, we've got to have some romance. But I was so thoroughly charmed by both Leo Woodall, who plays, you know, this kind of young, hot 29-year-old who rescues her from a tree, does a good job, I think, of looking at age gap relationships and the complexity of that. But then Chiwetel Ejiofor, I mean, who is always dazzlingly charming, is so lovely in this. He plays the teacher at the school who's kind of very brusque and a bit abrupt and a bit rude, and I melted the moment that he appeared on screen, because he just has this ability to create a character who actually, you know, at the start of this is, you know, fairly unlikable, but you understand that, you know, it's because he has hidden depths. And I just really, really loved seeing the relationship between him and Bridget. come to life, and the sparks that fly, sometimes literally, on screen. So this I just loved, as you can tell, because I'm banging on about it. I loved it. I laughed so much. I cried so much. I was delighted by it. I'm going to go and see it again.
Yeah, I think also that I agree completely about all the supporting cast, and I think the kids, especially what you said about the family dynamic, I think that's why I felt like the love story was almost secondary, because it felt so much like a film about family first, and love second. And I think that is what they went for, and I think they did it very well. But then there is that thing, like you said, it is a rom-com, so I kind of felt like they needed the kind of love complications to show up. Still, I think both actors were great, the love interests, and I think, like you said, there were like hidden depths. I think that's why, despite knowing where the story is going to go, I was kind of like what I said about Hard Eyes. I was like intrigued to see how it's going to get there, like what's going to be the journey. It's definitely worth a watch. It's also one of my favorites this year so far, and I would probably give it a rewatch as well.
I'm so glad also that you said that the love story is kind of secondary and it is also a love story about family, because I think that actually is what makes it so wonderful. Is it is not about Bridget having a hole in her life, because she doesn't have a romantic partner. It's actually about the fact that her life is whole with her children, but that doesn't mean that she can't also have romance. And I actually think that there's such a lovely scene towards the end where they're kind of discussing magic, and I think that we understand the sort of the magic of how human relationships can coexist through time and space in a kind of metaphysical, almost interstellar-esque way. But I just thought it was wonderful. And I have to say, Colin Firth is barely in this film, but my goodness, I don't know if anyone has ever managed to be so devastatingly effective in such little screen time. I mean, it was like Mamma Mia 2 when Meryl Streep shows up. I just was immediately in floods, and I don't think I'll ever be able to hear someone sing I'd Do Anything ever again without feeling emotional.
Yeah, no, I totally sobbed. I really agree, because I think for me in my head, Colin Firth is part of the supporting cast, and he is, but he's really only in it for what, like 2 scenes, and like barely technically has anything to do. But like you said, he's so effective. It feels like the perfect tribute to him in the previous films before we kind of go on that new kind of journey that's very different than the previous films.
No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, Bridget Jones may be mad about the boy, but I, for one, am mad about this film.
Yes, absolutely. I definitely recommend.